All right, so this is the U.S. politics collapsing Haiti. So I'm not super keen on foreign policy, and I understand it's not all of the USA's problem and fault, but we usually play our part, having our military hand in everything. The U.S. puppet leader Ariel Henry that we installed assassination, uh, after the former assassination failed to actually settle the unrest that grew from the 2010 Haiti earthquake, growing into greater destabilization via the 2018 2024 economic collapse and mass migration escaping the chaos of gangs and militias. But of course, the Malthusian politicians blame immigrants for stealing houses and causing our economic collapse as we judge them based on the civil unrest in Haiti inherently like an illness carrying the crisis. So, the, the collapse of U.S. Haiti politics. After the earthquake that devastated Haiti in 2010, a popular musician known as Sweet Mickey won the favor of quite the power couple. Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, a UN special envoy to Bill Clinton. In the subsequent presidential election, the musician whose given name is Michelle Martelly came in third. But the United States um sorry, and other interested parties pushed aside the second place finisher for no democratically legitimate reason, allegedly fraud without any statistical or constitutional basis for the decision, so that Martelli could win in 2011 runoff, which he won. Thus began the country's dozen-year downward spiral, centered on the Haitian Tete Calais or Bald Head Party, fittingly named after the Sweet Mickey's famous pate, rather than any set of values or policies for complex and tragic reasons. The United States stubbornly stuck with Martelli, his hand-picked successor, Jovenel Moise, and most recently with Moise's last extra-constitutional prime minister, Ariel Henry, as Haiti descended first into kleptocracy, then into systemic gangsterization and lawlessness, and finally into complete chaos into the whole house of cards until the whole house of cards came crashing down last month as gangs united against the government and prevented Henry's plane from landing at the Porta au Prince Airport. Even the United States had to concede that its hand-picked leader was no longer tenable, and Henry was forced to announce that he would resign as a part of the transition process, though even that was dragged on. So stay tuned. Why would the United States stick with the one very personality driven political party and its progeny when independent human rights, democracy, and good government watchdogs found over and over that their leaders were involved in the theft and mismanagement of billions of public money, the massacring of people in poor opposition neighborhoods, and the sponsorship of gangs that eventually branched out into their own violent criminal enterprise? When the party's leader evidenced a complete lack of interest in democratic structures, such as they didn't organize elections for years and dismantled an electoral system now in tatters, when in retrospect, their crimes were so apparent that the United Nations panel of experts recently found that Martelli had cultivated gangs to advance his political agenda. A Harvard Law School report found that Mosey's aides were part of massacres against civilians in opposition neighborhoods, and the government of Canada and the United States issued sanctions against many of top Haitian officials of past dozen years. The painful answer is that despite official protestation, the United States has not actually supported the development of any kind of popular democracy in Haiti that we demand, and but we don't always achieve for ourselves. Real democracy in Haiti would mean the poor mass of Haitians who comprise the majority of the population would be in the driver's seat, electing governments that could carry out things they want, like much higher wages, universal free education, and infrastructure development that assists small agricultural producers. U.S. favoring Haitian politics and business elite. The small number of wealthy families and interests that run the Haitian economy do not favor significant change, but rather seek to maintain control and exploit the cheap labor of the disempowered, famously hard-working population. And the United States has stayed close to the economic elite, after acting as if the Chamber of Commerce is pretty fair representative of civil society at large. I saw this as a college student even before the end of the De Villar dictatorship. When I visited Haiti in January 1980 to study the effect of the program funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, I found that our government favored developing cash crops like flowers and coffee rather than emphasizing rice and other foodstuffs for nutritional sufficiency. The United States accepted that schools and media were French, spoken by less than 5% of the people, rather than the universally spoken Creole, because French was a language of business and international commerce. After Jean-Claude "Baby Doc" Devoir fled Haiti in 1986, a wonderfully boisterous civil society began to take shape. All manner of groups sprung up representing peasants and women, promoting literacy, human rights, neighborhood protection, and beautification efforts, and more. After Haiti started having legitimate elections in 1990, two leaders secured the support of Haiti voters in large numbers: John Bertrand Aristide and Rene Preval. But the United States didn't care for these populist leaders who endeavored to make the country more equitable. It wanted responsible, stable, pro business leaders to help Haiti, quote, move forward, which just means the IMF will put them in more debt, and we fearmonger about like the slavery we put them through, and if we give them power, then they're gonna make they're gonna oppress us, and this has been the general stereotype and myth of just the colonialist fear has always been the proletariat rising up, but it's never to rise up and necessarily destroy them. They just want what you have. They want the nice things. They don't want your head on a pike at first. Okay? Jesus Christ. I've always thought the backing Haitians' effort to form unions and double and triple wages to level that can support a family would lead to widespread prosperity. I imagine big markets in the United States, Canada, France, and beyond for justly made goods for a country whose conditions of slavery were so horrific that it has symbolized racial oppression ever since. My version was never shared by U.S. policymakers who oppose large minimum wage increases as irresponsible and unreasonable, and union organizing campaigns as radical and unwanted, at least by those who own the factories. Hold on. All right. Is it any wonder that Haiti remains the poorest country in the hemisphere? After I was elected to Congress in 2018, I secured a seat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and its Latin American subcommittee, and I created a Haitian caucus. Once Democrats won control of the House in 2021, HFAC Chairman Greg Meeks championed my work, and we conducted more oversight on Haiti politics than Washington had seen in years. But I can't say we succeeded. When Moise failed to organize elections and began ruling by decree, the United States said he remained the legitimate ruler of Haiti. When he claimed he had an extra year as president because he took office later after an electoral controversy, almost all Haitian legal experts said there was no constitutional basis for this. But the United States backed him, and he stayed. After he was assassinated, there was a squabble between his sixth and seventh prime minister. Moise had named the seventh Henry, but he had not taken office at the time of Moise's death, partly because there was no longer a parliament to ratify his accession to the post. The United States declared that Henry was a legitimate de facto head of state and continued to recognize him against virtually blanket opposition. The Haitian civil society solution rejected. So you're gonna see that just like killing off Iranian uh, ceasefire deals, like people are killing off people who want ceasefire deals, which is basically the same as what you're about to see with the Montana Accord. Basically, things are just stalled because they don't actually want to settle the violence. They want this orchestrated thing to play out because war essentially makes money. It brings in real estaters, it brings in like people who want to rebuild, as opposed to like pandemics where there's not necessarily rebuilding when people die and are sick anyways. It, Amazingly, amidst all the problems Haiti has had, a group of civil society leaders began organizing a transition back to democracy before Mosey's legitimate term ended. I watched with admiration as they did the real work of democracy, negotiating with more and more leaders to grow their movement. Their transition plan changed constantly to bring new groups on board. In the end, the agreement they brokered, which became known as the Montana Accord, had the support of many political parties and a stunningly broad range of leaders from religious, human rights, legal, and business organizations, unions, and other popular groups. While far from perfect, it represented a workable roadmap back to democracy and even included a place for representation for the ruling party despite its corruption and connection to violence. The U.S. election the U.S. reaction a huge meh. I did everything I could think to make leaders in the State Department and the White House see that they were watching the kind of deep and authentic democratic development Alexis de Tocqueville praised in our own country 2 centuries ago to no avail. State Department officials told me they were afraid of instability and power vacuum if they got out of the way of what civil society leaders called a Haitian solution to the crisis. I kept wondering, isn't there enough instability already to realize we must change course? We can't have a fresh start kind of transition to democracy, they said. Why not? I wondered. After all, no election overseen by Henry, as the United States continues, until recently, to expect, could possibly be seen as legitimate. State Department leaders simply couldn't imagine that a broad based group of Haitian leaders who swore off presidential ambition in favor of rebuilding democratic structures could succeed. In any event, the United States wasn't about to throw in with them if that's what elite actors ruling political parties and their affiliated gangs wanted. All right. Sorry, I think my mic was rubbing against my shirt. All right. Foreign security interventions. For most of the year, the State Department has insisted a foreign policy force is the only way to go. But considering Haiti's long history of colonialism and post colonial foreign interventions that have ended in a failure, shouldn't a turn to political legitimacy come before any thoughts of foreign military force or police assistance? Why not allow the Haitian people to first install a transitional government designed to a broad swath of civil society and then let them seek whatever international assistance they need in a transparent fashion? Is it so hard to see that the United States organizing and funding an international force, even if the police or troops aren't American, is one thing, and providing security assistance sought by a new and legitimate transitional government is something else altogether? So here we are. The refusal to see and take seriously groups representing the broad, black, proud, impoverished majority, to see that they are perfectly capable of governing themselves, has finally fallen in on itself. Henry is on the way out. Now gangs are running the place without even a fig leaf of foreign imposed official rule. Insecurity and hunger are rampant throughout the capital region, and Kenya suspended its efforts to send a security force until there's a government to host it. You know you're in a bad place when murderous gangs step up to lead a revolution to force the removal of an extra constitutional ruler who is only in place due to U.S. support. Sadly, the period when the Montana Accord could have been implemented has passed. After too many months of being rejected in the United States and other foreign powers, given the lack of support for this Haitian solution to the crisis and the inability to breathe life into it from the bottom up amidst gang control of the capital region, Haiti now faces exactly the kind of power vacuum the United States has said it was trying to avoid. U.S. policymakers and others are supporting the installation of a constitutional government that are trying to make it up on the fly. Is it expected to include a presidential council imposing a 7 voting leaders and 2 observers and a prime minister, and Henry is to step down once it is in place. But that plan already is taking weeks to put into place, and Henry has already on several occasions questioned its viability. Learning lessons. Whatever happens, the United States needs to learn the lessons of rebuilding durable democratic governance, even where it refused to follow them before. Forget about quick elections, whatever time it is necessary. Haitians must have sufficient claims and security, or there is no hope for free campaigning and sufficient voter participation. They must have confidence in the government organization and elections. That that its interim leaders will not buy, manipulate, or coerce the electorate. In order to turn out to vote, the rule of law and the free press are also necessary ingredients for the popular will to express itself. In other words, Haitians must be allowed to rebuild the conditions necessary for authentic democratic elections. Any transitional structure must be run for the good of the people and not to advance the interests of popular politicians, parties, or business elites. In the coming days and weeks, the transitional government will begin to take shape. People close to the negotiations anticipate that the Presidential Council will announce itself in the official government gazette, Le Montour. The council will select a council president and an interim prime minister, and altogether they will govern Haiti and mount elections expected later next year. Meanwhile, we in the United States and the international community should be preparing to steadfastly support the Council in resisting pressure from gangs and corrupt politicians and leaders and in building back democratic institutions. This is the supportive role that the U.S. government should have played in the past. Some 230 years ago, after the Haitian people threw off the yoke of slavery, one has to wonder when the United States and other countries will begin to see Haiti as a country full of brilliant people who can govern themselves if we only listen to them, respect them, and honor their own choices in rebuilding a durable democratic culture. So, it's not just slavery, unfortunately. Like, if we're speaking from the context of um, using Africans as an example in America, if we're seeing this as the perspective of like untouchables, then it's not just slavery. There was probably apartheid, segregation, eugenics, everything after the usage of their bodies. It's just a different form of um, destruction on their personhood. It's just now it's a little more like sanctioned, and we worry about optics a little more about this. But, anyways, moving on. So, due to the Haitian government collapsing and migrants coming in to the country, specifically Haitians, Vance blames Harris migrants for Wisconsinites suffering to housing prices. Speaking with Spectrum News in Eau Claire, Wisconsin on Tuesday, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance said Wisconsinites are suffering because of President Kamala Harris' uh, policies, and said foreigners are taking the homes that should be rights to go. Taking the homes that should, by rights, go to American citizens. He also continued to defend spreading what he described as outlandish claims about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, eating household pets, and he blamed the rhetoric of Harris and other Democrats for the apparent attempted assassination targeting former President Donald Trump. Trump, uh, yeah, while insisting the Republican presidential nominee has every right to be a little angry at his political foes as he ratchets up the tenure of his own rhetoric. So, there was never actual any proof that Biden or Harris did this to to do the assassination. Trump might have actually done this to himself. Like, he says horrible stuff, and like there's just desperate people who thought they could be on Trump's side. Um and they're probably lashing out now. Mm. So, Springfield story is increasingly an American story where you have way too many migrants coming in. Vance said for his rally on Tuesday night, blaming Harris and the Biden administration border policies for such an influx. Quote, and what it means in practice is a lot of social services are overwhelmed, lower public safety, rise in communicable diseases, certainly an increase in stress on hospital services and school services. Schools, hospitals, and government buildings have had to shut down in recent days as more than 30 hoax bombs and shooting threats have targeted the city. Earlier on Tuesday, Vance argued that because many of the threats were originated from overseas, he and Trump shouldn't be blamed despite many local officials, including Republicans, pointing to their comments as causing the chaos. Quote, they've tried to arrest him, they've tried to kick him out of social media, they've tried to make it impossible for President Trump to actually get out of there, speak his words, and speak his message to the American people, which is so ridiculous. He literally says, and then says, oh, fake news, I didn't say that. So I think Trump's just generally a coward. Anyways, Trump said in his interview with Spectrum News in Eau Claire, unfortunately, quote, unfortunately, when you make a censorship the the heart of your campaign, some people take censorship to its logical conclusion, which is to silence a person completely with an assassin's bullet. Jesus. Vance conceded the rhetoric in his country has gotten a little overheated and encouraged everybody to tamp down on it a little bit, though he continued to hammer Trump's opponents for alleged censorship and other lines of attack. But we have to remember that President Trump has taken two assassination attempts now in just the last 2 months. I think he has every right to be a little angry at some of the political leaders who, instead of debating his ideas, are going after him personally and trying to censor him, he added. When pressed on his claims about Haitian immigrants in Ohio, Vance said immigrants were a drain on social services and to blame for the housing prices. He told Spectrum News, "We are, of course, want to be welcoming to immigration, but legal immigrants and not but only legal and not legal immigrants. The Haitian immigrant community in Springfield, Ohio, is in the country legally, according to the city government." Quote, "When you let millions of migrants, you actually have homes going to foreigners that should, by rights, go to American citizens. That puts huge stress on American citizens' ability to buy homes. It also drives up the cost of housing for American citizens," which is the greatest myth, Malthusian myth ever, that immigrants depress wages. Okay. Vance said, "We've been talking about this for months, and the American media largely ignored it until some of until more outlandish claims from citizens in Springfield started to make their way to the top of the national conversation. You cannot have a country where you drop 20 to 25 million people who shouldn't be here. It puts a strain on everything and makes everybody poor hurt." All right. So, this is really depressing. Okay. I really just want to move on to my next point here. All right. So, this is no surprise, but Trump's eugenics attack. Migrants have murder genes. All right.
She wants to go into government housing. She wants to go into government feeding. She wants to feed people. She wants to feed people governmentally. She wants to go into a communist party type system. When you look at the things that she proposes, they're so far off. She has no clue. How about allowing people to come to an open border? 13,000 of which were murderers. Many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. They left. They had 400.
Okay, so Trump would probably say that he didn't say that, fake news. And so I don't think this article is necessarily correct, and the media should be careful about how it spins things and put a sentence together that might not have been together in the first place. But it's implied what Trump is saying. Yes, he is implying migrants have murder genes, but he didn't outright say that. But for anyone skeptical of the media about how they spin a narrative, people will roll their eyes and just look for the direct thing that the article says that it's saying he said, which you have to really be literate to understand the context and what he's implying here. Okay, during an interview with Hugh Hewitt, Trump reiterated his fascination with eugenics and insanely claimed migrants coming into the country have murder genes. Trump was rambling and dissembling with his attack on VP Harris when his addled brain went off into a tangent about murderers and their genes. This narcissistic buffoon is cracked. Trump. Kamala Harris wants to go into the government housing. Okay, so I think he mentioned this government feeding people. This has been actually like the welfare queen and stigmatizing welfare in as much as more of the welfare was turning dark and less white people were in the limelight, or at least that's what people's focus were when attacking welfare. It was never white people. It was generally like Nixon and Ronald Reagan, the welfare queen breeding machine. That was for minorities. So this is a continuation of that, honestly. Okay. Hugh Hewitt and Gumpy, a right wing interviewee's response to Trump's vitriol was to say he's just astonished. Trump's focus on his family genes is not new. He's been using it for decades, trying to convince people he is superior to other humans. Reminds me of Nazi Germany. Every criticism he made about Harris is a lie. MAGA is pumping out more incredible and despicable lies as the election creeps closer. In 2020, CNN, the dark subjects of Trump's good genes compliment. I have Ivy League education, smart guy, good genes. I have great genes and all that stuff, which I'm a believer in. Okay. Well, I think I was born with the drive for success. I'm a gene believer. Hey, when you connect two race horses, you usually end up with a fast horse. And I really was, I had a good gene pool from the standpoint of that. So I feel like this is just how he talks because he once said from the standpoint of water, which is weird, but I mean, it's consistent with how he talks. You have to be born lucky in the sense that you have to have the right genes, Trump told Oprah Winfrey in 1988. New York Times, Michelle Antonio, who wrote a biography of Mr. Trump in 2015, had credited his view to Mr. Trump's father. Mr. D'Antonio told PBS's Frontline in 2017 documentary that members of the Trump family believe that they are superior people and that if you put together the genes of the superior woman and the superior man, you get a superior offspring. All right. So even if that's true, if you could be like naturally a genius, but if you're just don't have the right motivation, you're not inspired by anything, you're in a shitty environment, your genius isn't really going to take off. So, I don't think it's not necessarily in the genes for why you are successful. You're just in the right place at the right time. Yes, if for you do have the genes for this if you are around to flourish in the right environment. The genes need to flourish in the right environment. All right, moving on. All right, so so Trump is going to. Okay, this thing is in the way for some reason. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which gives the president power to detain or deport foreign enemies, could be broadly applied to target any non citizen that Trump declared a threat. Donald Trump is vowing to invoke a 226-year-old law to justify mass detainments and deportations in the United States, saying that Election Day will be known as Liberation Day if he is handed the keys to the White House. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is widely condemned immigration law that gives the president sweeping power to bypass equal protection and due process while targeting foreign citizens. When it had been invoked, it has led to human rights crises that history looks down upon, but the law has not formally been repealed by Congress. So laws don't go away, they just have things added onto them. So it's sort of like your body has hidden viruses and shit that's kind of dormant. Yeah, it's kind of fucked up. In a recent social media post after speaking in Aura, Colorado about immigrants, Trump wrote, "We are now known all throughout the world as Occupied America, but to everyone here in Colorado and all across our nation, I make you this vow. November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America." So this is a lie because Trump's not just going to be able to have the power immediately on that day, I believe. I believe there's days we wait for other votes to come in as well, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, referencing a few prominent instances where American people were killed by non-citizens, Trump said, quote, "We'll put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them out of the hell of the country." So there was something where somebody that Trump let out of jail actually went on to kill their wife. So I mean, and they were black, so I feel like he picks and chooses a little bit. Okay. Without naming any targets in particular, the former president continued by saying, "To expedite removals of this savage gang, I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to target and dismantle ever migrant criminal network of operating on American soil." He then vaguely accused his 2024 election opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, of inflicting violence and terror, falsely trying to point paint her as the one responsible for U.S. border policy and years-long rise in illegal border crossings. In recent months, aggressive executive action from President Joe Biden, which has taken place after Donald Trump urged Republicans to tank Congress' bipartisan a border bill in February, has triggered a record decline in migrant encounters at the southern border, reaching low levels that when Trump left office, and sitting at roughly 41% of what it was at the peak of Trump's presidency. So, Biden was doing Title 42, which the Republicans installed. So, I don't see how it's possible that Biden was allowing migrants when he was just as hard with Title 42 and basically flip flopping on whether he wanted to be pro asylum. Anyways, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is best described as the law that allowed President Franklin D. Roosevelt to place Japanese, Italian, and German immigrants into internment camps during World War II, whether or not they were affiliated with military actions or for their countries of origin. The Alien Enemies Act and complementing authorities have allowed presidents to target people on the basis of their identity, not the conduct of the threat they pose to national security, writes Catherine Jan Albright, a national security expert for the non bipartisan Brennan Center for Justice. In 1988, when Congress apologized and provided reparations for Japanese internment, it acknowledged that the policy was rooted in racial prejudice and wartime hysteria, not valid security concerns. She continues in her recent article, which centers around the dangers of overly broad 18th century law. Congress would later describe Italian entertainment as fundamental injustice, and the Department of Justice would recognize that German non citizens have been targeted based on their ancestry. Though the Alien Enemies Act is intended to be used only in wartime and apply only when official governments have threatened military action, Trump could conceivably weaponize the law to apply to people hailing from any country he deemed to be invading the U.S., which is how he was described several, which how he has described several nations whose residents have sought refuge in the states. People familiar with the team's policy deliberations previously told Rolling Stone that he has already come up with a very convoluted and crazy theory for how he can abuse the law to justify mass deportations, even if the U.S. is not at war with a foreign government. Okay. So I think that Trump might be able to do whatever he wants because of the Chevron deference regulations on businesses and the political immunity that is being fought for right now. So there really isn't much anyone can do with regulations taken out and political immunity on the table. Okay. Trump has long been known for spouting anti immigrant rhetoric, but its recent threats of mass deportation and his increasingly inflammatory tone on Election Day nears have sparked concern about the safety of immigrants and the people of color who are perceived to be in the country illegally. At the Aurora campaign rally on October 11th, local journalist Kyle Clark reported that while discussing migrant crime, Trump said, "We have to live with these animals, but we won't live with them for long." Immediately after, a supporter in the crowd shouted, "Kill them!" Whoa. Okay. Also at the event, Trump immigration advisor Stephen Miller, a white nationalist whose organization America First Legal was initially listed on the advisory board of Project 2025, said that under Trump, the United States would return to being a country of only Americans. The United States is, of course, a nation largely composed of immigrants and their descendants. Trump's most recent comments about illegal immigrants dominated the political conversation over the weekend, with many critics expressing concerns that he is being open about his plans to stretch the law. It's time for everybody to realize he is dead serious. He's a he's full of rage, deeply unstable, and surrounded this time only by creepy, ever angrier, and unstable sycophants. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy wrote on X, "This won't be America any longer if he wins." A barrage of posts have also popped up on social media platforms comparing Trump to Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler, who gained a cult following when he entered politics that allowed him to seize control of Germany and carry out the Holocaust. So, if you also remember him saying drain the swamp, that was actually what Mussolini once said. So, he's a mix of different fascists and authoritarians, I guess. So, anyways, quote, I think we're generally on the edge of electing Hitler here, and people are complaining about not being pandered to enough, wrote one user on X, and that 22,000 likes on Sunday morning, seemingly referencing to how some progressives have criticized Harris' candidacy over slight policy disagreements. Trump's own running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, referred to Trump as America's Hitler before he ran office and sought Trump's endorsement, which he's a he really has no principles and he's a grifter, or he planned on actually voting for him all along. In which case, I don't know, being a grifter in terms of optics, I guess that all that matters to be a grifter, I suppose. Anyways, retired Army General Mark A. Milley, who served as chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff under Trump, told journalist Bob Woodward for his upcoming book, War, that he used to warn colleagues how former apprentice host is a walking, talking advertisement of what he's going to try to do, according to the Washington Post. The outlet, which saw an advance copy of Woodward's book, reports that Milley called Trump a fascist to the core and the most dangerous person in the country. Okay. So I'm pretty sure he's going to potentially ban like some Latin American communities. He's definitely going to attack the Haitian migrants, but in reality, most of America is immigrants. So it's possible if Trump really wanted to be insane enough, he could full stop just remove Italians and Germans and Poles, etc. Which I don't think that's what he's gonna do. I do think this is more. I do think he's got specific demographics that aren't necessarily European that he plans on attacking. All right, algorithm as real estate agent. Algorithmic buyers purchased 1% of U.S. homes in 2021. Okay, so this was around during the peak of the pandemic. House sales priced by algorithms account for a small but growing portion of the real estate market. What's new? Companies that use algorithmic pricing models to buy and sell houses, known as iBuyers, purchased around 1% of the homes sold in the United States in 2021, roughly double the volume of such transactions in 2019, according to CoreLogic. It's real estate a data company. However, these deals may not benefit typical home buyers. How it works. Unlike traditional real estate agents who determine a property's value by considering the selling prices of similar properties nearby, iBuyers use models that estimate prices based on a variety of factors, including national real estate listings, mortgages, viewers of local businesses, and human assessments. The top four iBuyers account for 94% of all buyers' purchases between 2017 and early 2021, in the most recent time frame for which the data is available. Opendoor bought 57% of those homes, Zillow 27%, OfferPad 18%, and Radfin 2%. Zillow shuttering iBuying division after incurring a huge loss amid the pandemic, which disrupted housing prices and confounded its algorithm. In that time, 75% of iBuyers purchase took place in 5 states: Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. Their models can have difficulty estimating the value of purchasing their old properties that are older or atypical, so they tend to operate in cities with large numbers of newer, homogeneous homes, according to CoreLogic. In February, Opendoor told MIT Technology Review that its model could assess homes in locales that are harder to price, such as gated or age restricted communities, and its cities that offer more varied property types, including older buildings, multiplexes, and condos, such as San Francisco. Yes, but iBuyers sell 20% of their stock to institutional investors like banks and private equity funds rather than individuals or families. According to a January analysis by Bloomberg News, these investors, in turn, often sell their houses to landlords or rental properties. Why it matters? Automated pricing can make markets more efficient. It can also bring unintended consequences while iBuyers pitch their services as a way to streamline the Byzantine process of selling the buying houses. They often end up funneling homes into rental markets that can make it harder uh, than ever for individuals and families to find an affordable home. We're thinking while commerce may increase the market's efficiency in aggregate, we should work to make sure that systems we design don't inadvertently shut out some buyers. So, while JD Vance and Trump are fear mongering about immigrants, this is just a general tactic, just fear monger about immigrants. And of course, during the pandemic, during lockdown, we don't have a button that can just automate everything all at once. That's dystopian enough that we're living in these times. So I do think it was a necessary evil, potentially, an atlas, like a digital atlas to hold up the ceiling of the economy so that it didn't destroy everything. Now, I do think it could have been done better and not giving it to landlords, which there's no good that's going to come out of that. But yeah, so we got AI replacement in a way. But now, let's see. As IBM pushes for more automation, its AI simply is not up to the job of replacing staff. So, IBM's plan to replace thousands of roles with AI presently looks more like outsourcing jobs to India at the expense of organizational competency. That view of Big Blue was offered to the Register after our report on the IT giant's latest layoffs, which resonated so strongly with several IBM employees that they contacted the Register with thoughts on the job cuts. Our source have asked not to be identified to protect their ongoing relationships with Big Blue. Suffice to say that there were or are employees as senior technologists in business units that span multiple locations that were privy to company communications. These are not views from the narrow entrance to a single cubicle. We were going to refer to these referring to these people by pseudonyms, Alex, Blake, and Casey. Quote, I always make this joke about IBM, said Alex. It is. IBM doesn't want people to work for them. Every 6 months or so, they're doing rounds of resource actions. IBM speaks for layoffs or forcing folks into impossible moves, which results in separation. That's consistent with CEO Arvind Krishna's comment last year to replace around 7,800 jobs with AI. But our sources say Krishna's plan is on shaky ground. IBM's AI isn't up to the job of replacing people, and some of the people who could fix them have been let go. Alex observed that over the past few years, IBM management has consistently pushed for automation and the use of AI. Quote, with AI tools writing that code for us who pay for senior level staff when you have promote a youngster who doesn't really know any better at a much lower price, he said. Plus, once you have a seasoned programmer write code and that is by law the company's IP and it is fed into the AI library, it basically learns it and the author is no longer needed. But our sources tell us that scenario has yet to be realized inside IBM. The whole outsourcing to AI thing is a myth that somehow our upper echelon of Excels believes exists right now, Casey told the Register. The truth is that Watson X, IBM's generative AI offering, isn't even available to employees to attempt to try and help automate some meaningless task. It's so far behind OpenAI and ChatGPT that it's not even close. A Watson X chatbot is years behind ChatGPT, Blake said. Its web interface was horribly broken to the point of being unusable until July 2024, and no one in the entire organization uses it. A Watson X chatbot is years behind Oh, sorry. A Watson X code assistant technically knows PHP, but it is very inferior to GitHub Copilot. Blake told the Register, but it's still better than nothing. The CEO keeps imploring developers to use it. No one does, except maybe one or two people. Alright. Big Blue's developers have little experience with other code assistants and even ChatGPT, thanks to an internal ban on using external sources, a double LM, Blake added. He rated IBM's developers' knowledge of LLMs as likely substantially lesser than other major tech firms. We're told that the IBM Cloud Legacy, formerly SoftLayer, only around 1% of developers who work on the product deal with AI and LLMs. Hollowed out. Yet by getting rid of the experienced technical staff, IBM is making itself dependent on very technology that eludes it. Blake argues that IBM's focus on cutting experienced senior staff, those who are well paid and close to retirement, is an act of self harm because fewer developers in his experience, are entering the job market. Quote, senior software engineers stopping being developed in the US around 2012, Blake said. That's the real story. No country on earth is producing no new codes faster than old ones retire. India and Brazil were the last countries, and both stopped growing new devs circa 2023. China stopped growing new devs in 2020. Blake pointed to Stack Overflow's developer survey data to support the contention that the average age of software developers is rising and the proportion of those with junior level experience 0 to 4 years is shrinking. That's a concern in open source community too. Tech companies slowing down hiring and laying tens of thousands off in the US isn't helping grow the numbers of coders either. If it weren't for LLMs, there would be a serious lack of programmers in the next 5 years as Gen Xers started retiring, said Blake. I had planned on coding till the day I died, but now I think I'll be talking to LLMs primarily instead. But the IBM, he fears, the LLMs aren't ready to pick up the slack. Okay. Casey told us that the accessing automation tools is also hard. He recounted asking other teams for their scripts. Code was finally provided, but it was still necessary to open tickets manually in the workflow platform ServiceNow. Ancient code and offshore angst. Some IBM infrastructure is not in great shape, Casey told us. Our network firmware code is out of date. We're talking stuff that was end of life in 2020 and even the vendors have stopped working, he said. There were lots of meetings between the higher ups and Cisco, Arista and Juniper. I don't know what deals were made, but the vendors ended up providing full support for code that was EOL. The whole network is basically hung together by huge tape and hope. Hmm. All right. IBM tried to keep things ticking over by hiring network engineering contractors in India, but that didn't pan out. We're told. The contractors were supposed to handle basic network maintenance tasks, so the senior engineers would be free to work on more impactful projects like upgrading firmware across data centers. But the contractors were bad and were let go around 18 months back. Since then, we have not hired anyone, said Casey, noting that 6 years went by without a US based full time engineer being hired. That's crazy. But then they continued to cut staff yearly, even as management begged them, and we couldn't lose any more people. We're told U.S.-based network engineering staff will be reduced to 2 or 3 employees per shift during U.S. business hours, representing a 33% loss of staff per shift. That's monitoring and maintaining all of IBM's global data centers. The EMEA and APAC teams remain at full strength, at least on the networking team, with 5 to 8 workers on each shift. Workers in the situations faced by Alex, Blake, and Casey are unlikely to be in the mood to offer a rosy view of their employer. But at IBM, forming a rosy view may be even harder because Krishna's stated plan to replace people with AI appears not have the desired effect. IBM told the Register that despite taking a 400 million workforce rebalancing charge, reflecting the loss of a very low single-digit percentage of IBM's global workforce, the company still expects to the end of the year at roughly the same level of employees as we entered with. In the opinion of IBMers we spoke with, it's not AI replacing jobs, but cheaper employees who join an org that can't walk or talk and doesn't have a job or plan to turn things around. That's actually crazy. So it's a little bit of India replacement, but this is actually really messed up because they are using this. They know that people are thinking about this great replacement myth that Republicans love to fearmonger with. And so I do think that IBM doing this Krishna CEO, he is actually doing tension with 1/6 of the planet in some way. All right. So the final thing I wanted to touch on, I don't know why this is on iFunny at all. Somebody in the chat or comment section tell me why this is in iFunny. So, Warren Buffett, um, who is connected to like finances and the overall economic system. So, would you walk by a $5 bill on the sidewalk? Of course not. And yet, that's what you're doing every time you pass by a dead squirrel. The tail can be sold to make fishing lures. Skulls can bring up to $2 on eBay. The meat is worth a few cents as well. So if you aren't picking up those dead squirrels, don't come crying to me that you're broke. So he's not really expecting you to catch the roadkill and do all this processing. He's actually just making fun of people and shaming them for not putting in enough effort. Like if you're on the streets and you're not like mentally capable to handle it as some other people, then you don't deserve to live because you're not strong enough to survive. And that's really fucked up. This is the type of person that are making you believe that you should be getting roadkill because you can't afford food. This is sick and twisted. So, yeah. So, the elites are basically fear mongering about immigration while basically sucking the life out of our labor and time, and AI just siphoning the resources to the fucking rich, like banks and landlords alike. All right. I'll see you in the next one.